Brenda sat at her desk, reading the subject line of a new email. "You won't believe what my mother did to me before my wedding." Her hand trembled slightly as she opened the message, sensing something different. "This one," she whispered, "is not just betrayal. It's something deeper." She took a sip of her tea and began reading aloud. "Dear Brenda, I never thought I'd write something like this. Not even in my darkest nightmares did I imagine my own mother would be capable of what she did. I'm 26 years old, and until recently, I believed my mom was my rock. But now, everything I thought I knew has been shattered. I was engaged to a man named Joshua. Handsome, charming, respectful, he was everything I had ever prayed for. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, and my mother had tears in her eyes when I showed her the ring. Or at least, I thought they were tears of joy. Joshua and I were planning a small but elegant wedding. My mom insisted on helping with the arrangements, and I thought it was sweet. She kept saying things like, "I just want your big day to be perfect." Little did I know that she was planning her own fantasy in the background. At first, I noticed little things. The way she laughed too hard at Joshua's jokes. How she dressed more youthfully whenever he came around. Once, I caught her wearing a perfume she hadn't touched in years. Joshua had once mentioned he liked that scent. I tried to shake off the feeling. It's just mom being mom, I told myself, but things got weirder. She started calling him directly for wedding plans, bypassing me. When I confronted her, she said, "Oh, honey, I'm just trying to take some weight off your shoulders." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Because what daughter wants to suspect her own mother of something unthinkable? Joshua, on his part, remained the same, or so I thought. Loving, attentive, thoughtful. But now I wonder if it was all just a performance, a mask to keep me blind while something sick unfolded right under my nose. The truth began to unravel. Just 2 weeks before the wedding, I was at my mom's house picking up decorations when her phone buzzed. She was in the shower. I glanced at the screen. It was Joshua, the preview read. "Last night was unforgettable. I still taste you on my lips." Brenda gasped aloud, dropping the paper slightly. "Oh my God." She looked at the camera. "I need a moment to process this before we move on to the next part." I froze. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. I read the message again, thinking maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood. But no, the words were unmistakable, seared into my brain like a brand. My chest tightened, and I could feel the tears welling up before I could even process them. I stared at the door of the bathroom. I could hear her humming. That same casual maternal hum I grew up with, echoing through the house like everything was fine, but everything wasn't fine. I felt like my reality had cracked into pieces I couldn't pick up fast enough. I backed out of the room, phone still in hand, and ran to my car. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. My entire body was in revolt, nausea, rage, heartbreak, all surging through me at once. I didn't know where to go, so I just drove, fast, reckless. I ended up at my best friend Clara's house. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into her arms. I collapsed, sobbed, screamed. The whole story poured out between gasps and choked words. Clara was horrified. "Your mother? With your fiancé?" "Are you sure?" I showed her the message. She read it silently, her mouth falling open. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You have to find out everything. Don't just walk away, make them regret it." And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I was no longer the broken daughter. I was the woman who needed the truth. The next day, I started digging. I went through my mother's call logs, which she conveniently hadn't cleared. Late night calls with Joshua. Weekend meets she claimed were spa retreats. I even found a receipt for a hotel in Joshua's name booked during a weekend. I was supposedly visiting my aunt. I confronted Joshua the next evening. I asked him point blank, "Are you sleeping with my mother?" He laughed at first, tried to deny it, said I was crazy, but then I showed him the message. His face drained of color. He stammered, "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything." He had been sleeping with my mother for months. And worse, she let me plan a wedding while she planned her betrayal. Brenda, I wanted to collapse again, but instead I smiled. Because now I had a plan. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me shatter again. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, "You'll regret ever touching her." He opened his mouth to speak, but I was already walking out the door. I didn't need another lie. I needed revenge. Back at Clara's, I couldn't sleep. I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning like a carousel of pain and fury. How do you even begin to process a betrayal like that? Not just from a partner, but from your own mother. The woman who gave you life, now took everything from it. I remembered the way my mom used to brush my hair as a child, humming softly. I remembered how she cried at my graduation, how she supported me through breakups, and now all of that felt like theater. A performance masking a person I never really knew. It made me question every moment of my life. The next day, I called my wedding planner and told her to cancel everything. She was shocked. Cold feet? She asked. I almost laughed. Cold? No, I was burning. I was fire. I told her there would be no wedding, but that I needed one final request. Let the venue stay booked. I had a new event in mind. I created new invitations, no frills, no romantic fonts. Just bold black letters on a cream background. You're invited to a celebration of truth. I sent them to every guest who was supposed to attend the wedding, including my mother. I made sure hers arrived by hand. No one knew what it meant. Clara helped me set everything up. We kept it elegant but somber. Black tablecloths, candles. No music. Just the kind of haunting atmosphere that made people whisper, "What is going on?" I stood in front of the mirror in my white dress because I was going to wear it anyway. But this time, I wasn't a bride. I was a storm. The day arrived and guests trickled in, confused and curious. My mother walked in, dressed to impress. Smiling like a queen, Joshua followed, looking pale, sweating. They both froze when they saw me standing at the altar, alone, no groom, no pastor, just me and a microphone. "Thank you all for coming," I began. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but instead, it will be the most honest. My voice didn't shake. I told the entire room what happened, every detail, every betrayal. My mother's face drained of color. Joshua turned and ran. The room fell silent. People gasped, some covered their mouths. Others whispered in disbelief. A few guests even walked out, muttering that it had to be a mistake. But I stood my ground, never breaking eye contact with my mother. I watched as her expression cracked first. Confusion, then denial, then shame. She stepped forward, stammering, "Sweetheart, it's not what you think." But I raised my hand. "Don't," I said coldly. "You've said enough without ever opening your mouth." She looked around, suddenly aware of the silence, the judgment, the spotlight no longer flattering but scalding. I turned to the guests. "This isn't just about infidelity, it's about masks. The ones we wear in front of family, friends, and ourselves. I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought I knew what loyalty meant." My voice trembled just once, but I kept going. Turns out I didn't even know my own mother. After the speech, I walked down the aisle alone, holding the bouquet I had once dreamed of carrying to a future. I placed it gently in a trash bin at the door. It was symbolic and satisfying. A few people applauded. Clara rushed to my side and hugged me so tightly I thought I'd finally shatter, but I didn't. I was Steele.news spread fast. The next day, social media was buzzing. Someone had recorded the speech. It went viral. Comments poured in. Some called me brave, others were horrified. But the majority stood with me. "You exposed a truth most would hide," one woman wrote. "You're not broken, you're brilliant." My mother tried to contact me. Texts, voicemails, emails, none of them opened. I let her sit in her own silence for once. Let her feel what it was like to be ignored. Joshua, to my knowledge, left town. Maybe they stayed together, maybe not. I didn't care. Their story was no longer mine, but I wasn't done healing. Clara suggested therapy, and I agreed. It wasn't about forgetting, it was about understanding. Understanding how love can blind us, how family can betray us, and how sometimes the strongest thing we can do is start over. Alone, but wiser, weeks passed. I found peace in little things, morning coffee, solo walks, journaling. For the first time in years, I was building a life for myself, not for someone else. And it felt honest. There's a strange kind of freedom in having nothing left to lose, because then everything you gain is truly yours. I started writing again, something I had abandoned after college. Words poured out of me like a dam had cracked. Not just about Joshua or my mother, but about pain, resilience, and betrayal. Writing became my therapy, my voice when silence had once swallowed me whole. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten in my mother's neat cursive. My heart raced. For a moment, I thought about burning it without reading. But curiosity won. Inside, she wrote not apologies, but justifications. I was lonely. I didn't plan for it to happen. She claimed Joshua made her feel alive again, that he was the first to see her after years of feeling invisible. I nearly laughed. Invisible? She was the center of every family gathering, every conversation. If anyone had vanished, it was me, overshadowed by her charm, her demands. Her drama dot at the end of the letter. She begged for forgiveness, said she missed her daughter, said she didn't expect me to understand but hoped someday I would. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her, but because I needed boundaries. Clara told me I didn't owe anyone healing on their terms. You owe yourself peace, she said. Those words stuck. I stopped trying to make everyone comfortable with my pain. If my silence was loud, then let it echo. I was done translating my wounds for the people who caused them. Then came the family fallout. Aunts, cousins, and even my brother reached out, some angry at my mother, others trying to stay neutral. But neutrality and betrayal is just cowardice dressed as diplomacy. I made it clear, if they couldn't choose respect, they couldn't choose me. I started rebuilding my circle, smaller but safer. People who listened without judgment, who didn't flinch when I cried or retreat when I got angry. Real friends. I no longer felt the need to perform or pretend. There was something sacred in this new simplicity, and yet, on quiet nights, I still asked why. Not because I wanted her back in my life, but because betrayal from a stranger wounds. Betrayal from a mother's scars. And some scars, no matter how well stitched, always itch when it rains. A few months later, I saw a photo of them online, my mother and Joshua at a vineyard, smiling like newlyweds. Her hand rested on his chest, and his arm was draped protectively around her waist. For a moment, my stomach turned. But strangely, I didn't cry. I just stared. What disturbed me more than their happiness was the illusion they were selling. As if they hadn't detonated my world. As if love was enough to erase the ashes. I read the comments under the photo, people praising how radiant she looked, how lucky he was. They had no idea my instinct was to post the truth, to expose the betrayal, to let everyone see the ugliness behind that filtered joy. But I didn't, not out of grace, but out of strategy. I didn't want my name attached to their mess. I didn't want pity. I wanted peace. Instead, I printed the photo, folded it, and slipped it into the back of a notebook I rarely opened. Not to keep it, but to trap it. Like sealing something poisonous in a jar. A reminder of how far I had come from needing their approval or explanations. Then came the voicemail. My mother's voice, trembling, asking if we could meet. She said things weren't going as planned, that she was tired, that she missed me. I played it 3 times, and each time I felt nothing, just a quiet emptiness where anger used to live. I didn't call her back. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had nothing left to give. Some bridges aren't burned, they collapse from rot. And I had spent too many years trying to cross them while bleeding. This time, I chose to walk away. I began to write this letter to you, Brenda, not as a cry for help, but as a declaration. That I survived. That sometimes losing everything you thought you needed is how you find everything you truly are. That even betrayal can be repurposed into strength. So here I am, still healing, still learning, but standing. And if you choose to read this, Brenda, let your viewers know that love is not blind. It sees, and sometimes it sees too much and chooses to walk away with eyes wide open. I think what broke me most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the realization that my mother never saw me as a whole person. To her, I was a mere someone to reflect her beauty, her legacy, her image. When I started to shine on my own, she couldn't handle it. Joshua was just the match she used to burn down what she couldn't control. But I see that now. She didn't steal him because she loved him. She took him because I loved him. It wasn't desire. It was domination. A final, cruel performance and a lifelong rivalry I never agreed to. You see, Brenda, my mother always had a flair for theatrics. She lived for attention, thrived on admiration. I was her first audience, then her competition. And when I became a woman of my own, she needed to prove she could still take center stage. That's what this really was, a performance, not love, not romance, just a woman fighting time and relevance. And when I became her shadow, no longer she tried to eclipse me, But instead, she only revealed her own emptiness. Joshua, for what it's worth, wasn't worth the wreckage. After the dust settled, people began to whisper. He lost clients. Mutual friends stepped back. My mother's glow dimmed. And when they looked around for someone to blame, all they saw was each other. I moved to a new city. Started a job at a design firm. I rented a small apartment filled with plants and light. No more pretending. No more walking on emotional eggshells. Just me, healing at my own pace, growing roots in solid ground. Sometimes I still hear from people back home. They tell me my mother looks tired now, that she drinks more than she should, that Joshua seems distant, often disappearing for days. I don't gloat. I don't celebrate. I just feel free. Free from the illusion that family means loyalty. Free from the idea that love must always forgive. And free from the desperate need to be chosen. Because the most powerful choice I ever made was choosing myself. There was one moment months later when I almost answered her call. Her name popped up on my screen, and for a second, my thumb hovered over accept. But I didn't, not because I hated her, but because I no longer needed anything she could give. She left a voicemail, of course. Her voice shaky, a little slurred. She said she missed me, that she didn't expect things to turn out this way, that Joshua wasn't who she thought he was, that she made a mistake. She wanted to meet, to talk, but what could she say that would? Make it better? Would she apologize? Beg? Blame him? Blame me? I listened to that voicemail once, then deleted it. I'd already spent enough of my life decoding her manipulations and unspoken games. You know, Brenda, I used to think forgiveness was something you gave other people, but now I see it's a gift you give yourself. I forgave her not to let her back in, but to finally let her go. To break the chain between us that always pulled me down. In therapy, I learned that sometimes the most radical act of self-love is walking away, not loudly, not angrily, just quietly, and not looking back. I didn't need revenge. Life gave her the one thing she feared most, obscurity. Joshua. He tried reaching out too. A pathetic email that read more like a resume than an apology. He talked about how things had gotten complicated and how he never stopped caring. About me, I didn't respond. Not even to laugh. What he took from me was painful, yes, but what I reclaimed was priceless. My dignity, my voice, my identity. They tried to strip me down to nothing, but in their failure, I found everything. And that's why I'm writing you, Brenda, not to dwell in pain, but to show that healing is possible, that even the deepest betrayal can become a bridge to something better. I want other women to know you can survive the unthinkable, and you can rise. After everything collapsed, I moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I decorated it with light colors, plants, and soft blankets, things that made me feel safe. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I began volunteering at a shelter for women who'd suffered betrayal, violence, or abandonment. Listening to their stories made me realize mine wasn't unique. Pain has 1,000 faces, but healing always starts in the same place, truth. Told my story to one of them once, in a quiet moment. She didn't gasp, she just nodded, understanding instantly. That nod was more powerful than any apology I'd never received. It reminded me I wasn't alone. I never had been. Brenda. It still stings sometimes. Seeing pictures of my mother, living a life she stole, acting like she's untouched by what she did, but those moments pass quicker now. They don't break me anymore. They just remind me why I left. You asked in your videos once, what's worse, the knife in your back or the silence that follows? I used to think it was the knife, but now I believe it's the silence, the quiet after the betrayal, when you wonder if your pain even matters, but it does matter. All of it. The shaking hands, the sleepless nights, the anger you can't explain. It all matters because it means you still care. And caring, Brenda, it's proof you haven't gone numb, that you're still alive inside. I once thought I needed justice. Now I just want peace. I've stopped needing to understand why they did what they did. I no longer waste energy trying to make sense of senseless things. Some people are just broken in ways we'll never comprehend, and sometimes they break others in the process, but here I am, not broken, not anymore. Just wiser, stronger, and somehow still capable of love. And I think that's the most beautiful revenge of all. I stayed away from my mother after the wedding incident, but curiosity has a cruel way of creeping in. One night, I found myself scrolling through her social media, something I hadn't done in months. That's when I saw a photo that made my blood run cold. There she was, my mother in a silk robe, in the very same honeymoon suite I had once dreamed of booking for my own wedding. The caption read, "New beginnings with the man who truly knows me." It was nauseating. A twisted celebration of betrayal. Worse, I recognized the necklace around her neck. It was the one I had picked out for my wedding day. My ex-fiancé had helped me choose it, and now she was wearing it, parading it like a trophy of conquest. The pettiness wasn't even subtle anymore. Brenda. I wanted to scream. Not just because of what she had done, but because she seemed to enjoy rubbing salt in the wound. She had no shame, no hesitation in claiming what was mine. It wasn't just about love. It was about possession, domination. But then something unexpected happened. A woman messaged me through a fake profile. She said she worked at the same firm as my ex. She had overheard him bragging about how he had played both women just for the thrill. That I had been a bet, my mother. A bonus. I didn't know whether to laugh or collapse. My pain, my mother's betrayal, all of it had been part of a sick game for him. He didn't love her. He never loved me. He just wanted to prove he could. Turn a family against itself for his own amusement. That revelation shifted everything inside me. Suddenly, my mother wasn't the ultimate villain. She was a pawn too, just one too vain and desperate to see it. I was still angry with her, but something inside me softened. Just a little, because knowing he'd used both of us, it gave me back some power. I wasn't the fool he made me out to be. I was the survivor, and as for my mother, she'd have to live with the consequences of trading her daughter for a man who never loved her. After reading that message, I sat on my bed for hours, staring at the wall. My entire world had flipped again, only this time, it wasn't sadness that consumed me. It was clarity. I wasn't broken anymore. I was awakened, the illusion of love I had for him shattered completely. It was never real. Just manipulation wrapped in charm. And my mother, who thought she had won, was now left with the prize of deceit. The very man who humiliated both of us. I didn't reach out to her. Not yet. I watched from a distance. I saw her post fewer and fewer photos. I noticed how the smile started to disappear. It didn't take long before whispers reached me that he had begun to disappear at night. Apparently, he was working late and keeping secrets. The same game he played with me, now being replayed with her. But she didn't have the youth I had, or the innocence. She only had pride, and that pride was beginning to crack. Brenda. Part of me wanted to warn her, to tell her that he was using her too. But I didn't. I let it unfold naturally. Because maybe, just maybe, she needed to experience the same pain she inflicted on me to understand the depth of her betrayal. Weeks passed, and she called. For the first time since the wedding disaster. Her voice trembled, tired, cracked, uncertain. She asked if we could talk, said she had something to confess. My hands trembled as I held the phone. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe, neutral ground. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked older, thinner, like the guilt had been eating her from the inside. She reached for my hand across the table and began to cry. She told me he had left, that he had taken her savings and vanished, that everything she thought she had built with him was a lie. And then she said something I never expected. "I thought I stole him from you, but he was never real to begin with." I sat there, listening to her unravel. Her tears were real, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She wasn't the victim, just another pawn in his twisted game. And I had finally stepped off the board. When she asked if I could forgive her, there was a long silence between us. I could see in her eyes that she wasn't expecting a yes. But she needed to say it. Needed to face me, not just to be forgiven, but to finally face herself. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, that the pain she caused had already reshaped me into someone stronger, and that I hoped she would learn from it. But forgiveness, that would take time, maybe a lifetime. Maybe never. As I walked away from that cafe, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. I had no more ties to either of them. No more weight on my chest. Just the wind in my face and the sound of my own heels walking away from everything I used to be. Brenda. I never thought I'd find peace in the ashes of that betrayal. But here I am. I've started therapy. I've joined a local writing group. I even started dating again, not looking for rescue, just connection. On my own terms, this time. Funny how life can twist in the darkest ways and still leave space for something new to bloom. I'm not the same girl who almost married a man who lied to everyone about love. I'm a woman who survived, and that's more powerful than revenge. To anyone listening to this, if someone betrays you so deeply that your soul feels shattered, remember this: the pieces can become something even more beautiful when you rebuild them for yourself, not for anyone else. Thank you, Brenda, for giving voice to stories like mine. I hope mine helps someone out there see that walking away isn't weakness. It's the beginning of your own healing. And sometimes the ultimate revenge is simply living well